back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Hi, my name is Holly and I'm a wildlife photographer here in the UK, and today I am going to be discussing how to go about finding wildlife, because I feel like that is the biggest challenge in wildlife photography. And if you're just getting started, then you head out and you think there's wildlife everywhere, I'm gonna take some amazing photos, and then you quickly realise or you quickly get disheartened by the fact that you don't see wildlife immediately, and then you kind of question what you're doing. So today I thought it would be interesting to discuss the different ways of going about finding different wildlife species and groups, and some top tips, things like that. In terms of where I am today, I am at one of my local nature reserves. It is quite a dark, grey, very misty, slightly soggy day. But we're going with it. If I stopped filming because it was a rainy day, then I would not be publishing any videos, because I live in Devon and it rains at least once a week. But in terms of what I will be using today, is I've just got my macro lens, and I have got a quick update about my camera equipment, which I will let you know in a minute. But for today we've got the macro lens set up, and we're just going to be having a look around to see what I can find. There's quite a lot of dead trees and logs about, and so I'm thinking maybe some mushroom, insect shots, stuff like that today. But yeah, I hope you enjoy today's video, and I will catch up with you in a little while once we've walked around, and we will start discussing how you can go about finding wildlife. So whilst I'm just walking to my first location in the nature reserve, I was thinking I would give you the camera equipment update that I just mentioned. So essentially, if you've been watching my channel for a little while, you will know that I have, or I had now, a telephoto lens which was a Sigma 150 to 600mm, and it was very good, and I took a few pictures that I really liked with it, and it was good for a while. However, what I realised is that it doesn't really suit what I want to do with my wildlife photography. It was very heavy as well, it was very bulky, it was a bit of a nightmare to transport around the places. It didn't fit in my backpack with my other lens, which annoyed me more. And so essentially the negatives outweighed the positives in the end, and so I have traded it in, and I am buying some new equipment going forward, and it will be arriving in a few weeks' time. So when it does, I will reveal what it is. But essentially it is I'm going to be focusing more on macro photography going into the future, and the new equipment is to help me do that. So it's not a new telephoto lens, and I do think this isn't the end of me photographing things from a distance, because I love photographing all wildlife, not just macro. But what I realised is that most of the pictures that I like the best were taken with this lens here, and so it seems like I was just carrying it around telephoto when it wasn't entirely necessary, and the money could be spent elsewhere improving what I do already have. So that is what's happening with that one. I do think in the future I would get a new telephoto once I've kind of weighed up the pros and cons again and found something that suits more my photography. But yeah, that is the quick gear update for you guys. So it should arrive in the next few weeks, and when it does I will make a new video about it so I can show you guys. But for now we are going to stick with this. Oh, it's very dark here. That clip might be quite dark. But yeah, let's get on and find some wildlife today. Okay, so I'm currently just trying to work out how to take a photograph of a spider that is underneath some webbing, but the webbing's been all like, it's got loads of dewdrops on basically from the mist and the rain that's been going on, and I think it could be a really cool picture as soon as I work out how to take it so that you can see the spider and the kind of raindrops on the webbing as well. But whilst I figure that out, I thought I would begin discussing how you go about finding wildlife. And so I think the first step in most wildlife photographers' journey in finding wildlife is that they start in their local area or in their back garden. If you've just moved house and then taken up wildlife photography, this is going to be slightly tricky for you because you might not know what's about. But if you've like grown up in a house with a garden or you have a local green space, then you're going to have seen at least some wildlife at some stage in this area, and I think that is where most wildlife photographers begin in practicing their photography on easier subjects like ducks, birds, bees, things like that. And I think that is a great first step for wildlife photography in finding wildlife, is look in your local area, maybe discuss with your neighbours or your family if they've seen anything as well, because I know that my mum, every time she sees like an interesting bird or insect anymore, she sends me a picture on WhatsApp to let me know that she's seen it and where exactly she's seen it. So that is a really useful source if you're just beginning with wildlife photography. Now, the good thing about using wildlife that's in your local area, as in your garden, local parks, things like that, is that it is really good and really accessible. The issue comes when you kind of want to start looking for particular species, or you're more interested in, let's say, reptiles, but there's none of those in your garden. So where do you then begin looking? That is where what I'm going to discuss next. I'm going to walk away from this spider in the bush now because I have taken several shots and I think it will work as a picture. You'll know because you'll see it on screen, but I can't, there's no real angle where the spider is completely in view and the webbing isn't covering it by some extent, unless I was to lie down on the floor, which I'm not really keen on because it's quite wet here, and also this nature reserve is notorious for having lots of ants, and so I'm less keen on that for today. But I think we'll move on from this spot. And I have just seen a funky looking shield bug. We will not be moving on from this spot. We will be taking a picture of this guy who is walking towards me on a piece of heather, and then we will discuss where to look, or how to start looking for more focused wildlife when you want to look for particular wildlife species, how you go about doing that. So I'm not sure if you can see him, I will try, but there is a shield bug there that has just been walking around. So let's take a little picture of him. Okay, so I've now moved away from the shield bug. It was kind of in the very centre of the bit of heather, which meant I did get slightly spiked by the heather trying to take a picture of it, and then it kind of crawled further into the plant, so the view was kind of more obscured, and so I thought best to call it quits and find something else. But onto wildlife, when you want to find a particular species, how do you go about this? So we're going to start with species that in the UK aren't endangered or at risk, or have any protective measures against, and we're going to discuss how to find not common wildlife, but also not super rare wildlife to start with. We're going to get onto even rarer wildlife later on in the video. But so for example, let's say you want to find a common lizard. For me, today would not be the day to look for common lizards because it is definitely not the conditions or right time of year for that. But if I wanted to go and find one, what I would do is I'd start off on my computer, or if you don't have a computer, your phone, anything that has internet, failing that, a book. And what you want to do is you want to find out as much as you possibly can about that individual species, and any habitat and time of year and like time of day, anything at all like that. So for common lizards, they like a lot of heather, and they like heathery moorland, stuff like that, and you'll only see them in about when it starts warming up, so late May all the way through to early September, and that's where you want to see them in the UK. So there's no point looking for one of those in October. As I said, today would not be the day. It's rainy, it's October, it's about 14 degrees, so it's not super cold, but it's not warm either, and there's no sun, so you're very unlikely to see anything lizardy basking when it is probably keeping warm in the undergrowth. So yeah, the first step is to research everything you can about the particular species that you are looking for, and this is the same process that I do for anything that I'm looking for. I will do as much research as I possibly can, I will make some notes, stuff like that, and then the next step is to kind of see what areas around you match up the habitat that it's described as living in. So this is sometimes easier, sometimes not so easy, depending on the species. But if you go onto websites such as the Wildlife Trust or the RSPB, and you search for most of these websites have like an index of different wildlife species, and you search for the wildlife species, so in this case common lizard, then what happens is it tells you the habitat, and then it sometimes says, why don't you try visiting your local nature reserve, blah blah blah, and it'll say they live here, which is really useful because then you know exactly where you can go about and see this wildlife species. So for example, my local, the nature reserve I'm in right now is well known for having common lizards. It appears on the poster sign as you walk into the nature reserve, and there's lots of signs that are like, look out for common lizards. So this would be a perfect prime location to find them. And it doesn't require much searching on my part because I already know that they're here. So that is kind of how you go about finding wildlife that you're not too certain about, but mainly the first step is research what you want to see. Okay, so let's say that you have gone out, perfect time, perfect location, but you haven't seen anything. What is kind of the next step after that? And the next step is really simple, and that is to go back. And essentially, I give it about 4 visits to a location before, and like 4 chances to see something before I'm like, I need to try somewhere else. And the reason for this is very simple, in that wildlife is unpredictable and it doesn't always stick to what it says on the internet. So even though it does say that common lizards love bright sunshine and they like basking in it, and so you should go out midday on a really sunny day, sometimes you do that and they aren't there. And then you try on a slightly cloudy day and you're like, oh, I'll just go for a quick walk just to see what's going on. And you spot loads of them and you're like, oh, that doesn't entirely add up. But yeah, wildlife is unpredictable. So even though the conditions might be perfect, the wildlife might not like the perfect conditions. So it's always worth going back 3 or 4 times just to see if you can spot it then instead. Okay, so let's say that you've gone to a few locations, you've done some research on different species, and you found some of the wildlife species you were interested in photographing, but there's still more that you want to see and you're not really sure how to because the locations that you're near don't say that they're there, and so you're not really sure how to progress in finding them. And there will always be more wildlife species that you want to photograph. It is a sinkhole, and the more you get into wildlife photography, the more you'll want to see and the more you'll want to photograph. So where do you kind of turn when you're not entirely sure how to see something, and research has kind of, it's got you so far but it can't get you any further. And that is where I think it's really useful to join local societies and local groups. So I'm in a mammal society, my local mammal society, and a local bat group, which have been really useful in seeing different wildlife in my local area and learning about different locations and learning things from people who are more experts in their field than I could ever be. And another good idea is to kind of volunteer for different charities in the UK, so the Devon Wildlife, or the Wildlife Trust I should say, not just Devon, and there's the National Trust and the Woodland Trust, things like this, where nature is kind of the heart of what they do, and you can volunteer with like an ecology team and a reserve team, and they'll go out and do work on reserves. Even though that is not specifically wildlife photography based, it can be really useful in finding out things about your local area and local nature reserves and stuff that you didn't know before, and finding out where different species are in that area that you didn't know before. So for example, you can then discuss wildlife that you're wanting to see with people who know the area and they know kind of more than what you do about different reserves and organisations, and they can kind of give you guidance onto where to find things. One brief note about this kind of method is that you can't just turn up once and be like, can you tell me where this so-and-so lives, because that will not is not a good idea, and you should and also it doesn't give you, like, you learn more. Like, I've been a National Trust volunteer with the ecology team and the rangers for 4 years, and every time that I go I'm still learning more about wildlife and different things in the area that I then use in my wildlife photography continuously. So it's not really a turn up once and gain loads of knowledge and then don't do it again. It's kind of a continuous thing, which is, you know, it is a volunteer thing, so you're not going to get paid, but I only kind of volunteer for the National Trust once a month and I still learn loads, so it's kind of a give and take kind of thing. But that is another great way to get into seeing other wildlife species. A good example with the different groups that you can join, some of them, like the bat conservation, I'm in the Devon bat group essentially, and it is really good for seeing bats. And I'm not just interested in photography, I'm also interested in just seeing wildlife, so it was amazing either way. But one thing that I did see recently was there was a bat and beaver walk, so it wasn't specifically bats, so I did learn where beavers are in the local area, and I can now go back and photograph them because it was in a public area. Anyone can go there, and it was a really good chance to find out where exactly they are, as well as about the local habitat. And I now know where they are if I want to go and photograph them, which is really handy. So yeah, that is my next kind of advice if researching doesn't work or you want to take it a step further and find different species. So I am almost back to my car now. I haven't seen much wildlife since the shield bug and spider earlier. I saw another shield bug, but I have seen some cool mushrooms and things around. But other than that, there's not much going on today. But one thing I did want to address, my kind of final point in how to find wildlife, and something that I haven't mentioned yet in the video, is asking other photographers about wildlife locations, or other wildlife people about wildlife locations. And the reason for this is because it's not really lots of people won't share locations with you, and it's nothing to do with you, it's just that you don't really know who you're sharing a location with. And in terms of prioritizing the wildlife and the different species protection and vulnerability, you don't want to go sharing locations with anyone, even if they have good intentions. You don't 100% know that, so it's not really it's not a thing that lots of people are comfortable with. Similarly, if you join nature photography and wildlife groups on Facebook, they usually in the rules there's something about not sharing locations. So that is something to be mindful of going into searching for wildlife. But saying that, also, if you find other photographers in your local area and you make friends and you build up a friendship, then of course good to share locations with them and what they've seen, and you can even then start organising trips together, things like that, which is really lovely. But in terms of sharing wildlife photographs with individuals, sorry, there was a random leaf hanging, it's not really a thing to do, and so just be mindful of that if you're just getting started. But I hope you have found today's video useful. There is a few bonus videos going up on my channel every Wednesday, along with these longer vlogs even on Sundays, so look out for that. There was one this Wednesday, Behind the Shot, a new mini-series that I'm working on, so if you want to see more of my content, check that out. You can also follow me on Instagram and check out my website as well. I also have a wildlife photography trail up, an exhibition trail in a forest in Ashcliffe Forest in Devon, near Exeter, as part of a collaboration with the National Trust. So if you're in the local area in November and it's 2024 still, you're still watching this video in the correct month, then that will still be up and you can check that out. Otherwise, I hope you have enjoyed today's video and I will see you all next week.